Hi, it's Lou from Christian Faith and Fiction. We are looking at some summer new releases for this year. Literally, how am I talking about summer book releases already? And I feel like we've only just got out of winter. How is it May already? I don't know. But I'm looking at book releases, Christian fiction books releases specifically, that are coming out in June, July and August. These are the books that I think might fit my personal taste. Let me know in the comments which books, if you know of any, that are coming out in the summer months that you're most looking forward to reading. These are books I think I might pick up in the future, not promising to pick them up in the particular months that they're coming out, but things that I'm going to put on my wish list for the future. So in June, we've got I've got three books for each month. So I put them on my phone. I'm just going to have a look through as I'm talking as well. So June, we've got Of Silver and Secrets by Michelle Griep. This is a series that I have been interested in looking at. I haven't read the first book, so I'm not going to spoil myself with the second one in case there is it's a sequential series, but it is, I think, it's set in 1889 in England, and I like Michelle Griep writings. Some of them, they're like the more Dickensian style ones rather than the really gothic ones, so this series sounds like it fits in with the series that I've liked. So I'm hoping to pick this one up at some point, but obviously after I've read book one. Hey, this is Editing Lou. Since filming this video, I have since discovered that this next book coming up is actually going to be releasing in July. The Sands of Sea Blue Beach by Rachel Hauck is coming out in June, and she's one of my favourite authors. She sometimes writes contemporary, sometimes writes a bit of dual time, sometimes both times are more modern, historical, a mixture of different things. But quite often a mixture. So it's the author that I'm drawn to in this one. I'm not entirely sure whether this is contemporary or modern historical. It's following Emery Quinn, who finds herself at crossroads between her career and complex family dynamics, living at home in Cleveland and struggling to connect with her blended family. Accepts the position of editor-in-chief at a struggling Gazette. And architect Caleb Ransom, who's returned to Sea Blue Beach, a place filled with both cherished and painful memories. So this one sounds like it's a one time period romance, but the author is what draws me to this particular book because I know I like her style of writing. And the third one in June is Awakened by Roseanna M. White. Again, an author that I really enjoy, but I have never read anything that's fantasy by this author. I've only ever read books that have been historical fiction. So I am quite fascinated to find out how she writes in the fantasy genre. This seems to be a world where beauty follows magic. She has no doubt that their upcoming awakening ceremony will reveal that gorgeous, kind, compelling Jade is far more than a mere mortal. But when Jade is kidnapped by a mysterious sect of Mer on the eve of a newly returned King's Ball, Arden will do anything to save her sister. So there's two sisters, royalty, balls, Mer, I'm guessing Mer people, like there's mermaids, mermen. And there is a Sea King, as in Sea King, involved. So, yeah, it will depend on whether the magic system is something I feel comfortable with, whether I like that or not. But I do really like the author's writing, so really fascinated to know how that's going to work. There is some faith elements supposedly in there as well. So interested in that one. In July, the Highland Heist by Basham is releasing, and it's book 4 in Freddie and Grace Mysteries. This is historical mysteries series. They get together in the first book, and then they're a married couple through the other books. I've read all 3 of the books, and this is going to be the 4th one, and this is going to be set in a Scottish castle to start with, I think. Then a trip to America. When they arrive, they find Grace's sister Lilias is the prime suspect of her husband's murder. So it's going to be a murder mystery. They're going to be finding out. Seems like there's some travel somewhere between America and Scotland, or is it going to be in Scotland? Meant to be in America, one or the other, with her sister and finding out a murder mystery. I love the 2 characters, the main 2 characters in these books. It's been a lot of fun to read and enjoyable. There's usually some romance in there with side characters as well, and yeah, I think it will be a lot of fun to read this particular book. I'm not sure if it's going to be the last one or not, but yeah, definitely continuing with that series. Another series I am continuing with is the Crier Stone by Lyndsey Lewellen. The first book, I believe, was called The Chaos Grid. Yeah, that was called The Chaos Grid, and it's sort of sci-fi type of this world sci-fi type of story, and so this was continuing with that story. In the first book, we were following Juniper, who was trying to avoid going to a certain city, and so with her aunt and uncle, I think it was, and so she joins this kind of crew that takes her out into the wilderness, and the world outside is much more wild, and there are various sort of creatures and things happening in that world. It's very much more wild sort of place where she chooses to go and join this trucker company, as it were, going out into those places. I think it's set on Earth, but like in the future, where everything is gone pretty bad and whatever's happened. I need to go back and listen to some of this story again so that I remember what happened in the first book, but I just remember it being fantastic. I remember there being a kind of biblical analogy, a biblical story retelling throughout the book, which I picked up on as I was reading it, and I thought that was really cool. So you definitely need to finish that story, although I might need to remind myself of what happened in it, because it's nearly a year ago that I've read that one. And then another book by Roseanna M. White is The Collector of Burned Books, and this is a standalone, I believe, World War II historical fiction set in 1940 Paris. She seems to be one of these writers who has like a series of maybe 3 books, and then a standalone, and then another series. This one is one of the standalone ones, and it's following in Paris. Ever since the Nazi Party began burning books, German writers exiled for their opinions or heritage have been taking up residence in Paris. There they opened a library meant to celebrate the freedom of ideas and gathered every book on the banned list, even incognito versions of the forbidden books that were smuggled back into Germany. Corinne has been reading those books and making the library a second home, but when the German army takes possession of Paris, she can't get to the library and all the secrets, and the Allies will need some of those secrets in the hope of liberating the city she calls home. So yeah, that's going to be a World War II book, and fascinating, I think, the concept of that, and books about books is always interesting, but I expect there to be some emotional bits along the way. Some of her books have definitely been hitting me in the emotions and in the feels before, but I've got a book that by a different author, the British Booksellers, by Kristy Cambron, that's set in Britain, but this one is set in Paris. And then in August, The French Kitchen by her is the next book, and this is another World War II book and another book in Paris, so I could have a Paris binge reading of Paris books, World War II books. This is set in 2 time periods by the looks of it, Paris 1952 and Rouen 1943. She often does multi-time period books and multi-perspective books, so you'll have different characters in each time period that you're seeing through, and 2 different time periods, even though they're quite similar, like they're only like 9 years apart, I think. And it is a book about as Paris rebuilds in the aftermath of World War II, one expat uses the skills she learned in French kitchens during the war to bring long-held secrets to light. Yeah, I'm expecting this one to be quite emotional. It mentions that Kat soon finds a simple cookery class unearth the tangle of gut-wrenching memories of war and questions about the high-ranking society husband whose past is as murky as her own. Yeah, I've enjoyed Kristy Cambron's books, although they have been pretty hard-hitting sometimes, in emotional roller coasters. So I'll have to be in the right place mentally and emotionally to pick that one up. But I do think that's going on my wish list for the future. Another series that I want to continue with is Winter's Chill by Morgan L. Busse. And I say continue with, I haven't read the first book, but I do own the first book, but I'm wanting to read this series. It is a Christian fantasy series, and it is a prequel, I think, to one of her previous series, which I haven't read. So if you have read it, I don't know whether you need to have read it first, or whether you should read the prequel first and then that series, or doesn't it not matter? I don't know. There seems to be a war going on between 2 countries, the Nordic wars. A lot of fighting, it sounds like. And warriors, female warriors. But Morgan L. Busse I read her Ravenwood Saga, which was up there on one of my favourites of Christian fiction fantasy series. So I am hoping that this one will be a good series. But I haven't read the first book, so I have to read that one first. And then finally, continuing another series, which I've read the first book of, Meant for Me by Betsy and Amant, is the 3rd book in this contemporary romance series, Magnolia Bay, I think, is it called? I read the first book just recently and really enjoyed it. It was my style of contemporary romance, and it had some Christian faith content in there as well, and it had some other, like, beside the romance, there was other sort of story going alongside it, which is what I like in contemporary romance. I like there to be a mixture of different plot lines going on, as well as proper faith content. And this one is going to be following Link, who is one of the friends of the original guy who's in the first book. The second book is following another one of his friends, so they're all interconnected, and there are these 2 characters, Link and Zoe, came up in the first book as side characters, so I am excited to read their story. I think Link is a guy who enjoys working out, running his crawfish business, and his best friend Zoe, she's working in the bay. She was working in one of the bayonet business, which I'm not totally sure what a bayonet is. I thought it was something you put in your hair, but I think it's something you eat. I'm not sure that I've ever come across that here in the UK, but that may not be, that may be because I can't eat gluten, and so therefore don't come across many different styles of pastries and what have you. It sounded like it was a pastry thing, but her bayonet shop burns down. Am I pronouncing that right? Beignet. Not sure. Beignet. Bayonet. Bayonet is like things you stick on the end of a rifle and run. Her shop burns down, and he has to help her start over. Yeah, will friendship survive the dangers of a marriage of convenience? So I'm not sure where that's going to go in that story, but I did really enjoy the style of it, and I liked those characters in the first book. So I am looking forward to reading those at some point later. Okay, those are just a brief overview of some books that I have been looking at I think would be suiting to me. Let me know in the comments if any of those suit your taste, you think, or any other books that you are looking forward to in this summer, be they Christian or clean fiction. Okay, I hope you're having a fantastic reading week. If you would like to see more videos about Christian fiction, you can watch these videos over here. Until next time, I pray God bless you and your families. Okay, have a great week. Bye.